Please, I'm begging you. I didn't steal anything. Maven's voice cracks as head housekeeper Cordelia's manicured nails dig into her thin shoulder, shoving her against the marble pillar of the servants' corridor. The cold stone bites through Maven's threadbare uniform, and she can feel the eyes of every palace staff member burning into her back as they gather to witness her humiliation. Liar! Cordelia's shrill voice echoes off the vaulted ceilings. The silver candlestick was found in your quarters. Do you have any idea what His Majesty does to thieves? They're sent to the crimson cells, where they drain you slowly, keeping you alive for weeks while they— I didn't take it. Someone must have put it there. Maven's hazel eyes flood with tears, but she blinks them back furiously. She won't give Cordelia the satisfaction. Not after 3 years of enduring her cruelty, her impossible demands, her casual violence disguised as discipline. The crowd of servants whispers and mutters. Maven catches fragments. Always knew she was trouble, and poor thing she's done for. And pretty girls always think they can get away with anything. That last comment comes from Brenna, one of the senior maids who has hated Maven since the day she arrived at Nighthaven Palace. Maven's beauty, even dulled by exhaustion and hunger, is apparently an affront to the older woman's sensibilities. Strip her, Cordelia commands. Check for other stolen items. Right here, right now. Maven's blood runs cold. The humiliation of being undressed in front of dozens of sneering colleagues, of having her poverty-worn undergarments exposed, of showing the bruises that bloom across her ribs from Cordelia's corrections. It's too much. She's survived so much already. Her mother's death 2 winters ago, the loss of their small cottage when she couldn't pay the land taxes, the desperate, hungry nights before she finally secured this position at the palace, thinking she'd found salvation in serving the immortal king who ruled the northern territories. Instead, she found hell with Cordelia as its warden. No, Maven whispers. Then louder, no! She tries to pull away, but Cordelia's grip is iron strong. Of course, Cordelia is a lesser vampire, granted immortality by the king himself for decades of loyal service. Maven is just human. Just mortal. Just disposable. 2 male servants step forward to assist, their faces carefully blank. Maven recognizes them, Garrett and Tomas, both men who've propositioned her, who she's rejected, who now seem eager to participate in her degradation. Wait! The voice cuts through the chaos like a blade through silk. It's quiet, almost hoarse, but something in its timbre makes everyone freeze. Even Cordelia's punishing grip loosens slightly. The crowd parts, servants stumbling over themselves to clear a path. Through the gap shuffles a figure Maven has seen around the palace for the past week, an old beggar whom the king, in his mysterious mercy, has allowed to shelter in the servants' quarters. He's draped in filthy rags that smell of the street, his long hair matted and gray, his face obscured by grime and an unkempt beard. He walks with a pronounced limp, leaning heavily on a twisted walking stick. "What do you want, old man?" Cordelia snaps, though Maven notices she doesn't use the same venomous tone she reserves for human servants. The beggar might be pathetic, but he's here by the king's explicit permission. Even Cordelia won't risk openly defying that. The beggar shuffles closer, and Maven notices his eyes for the first time. They're a startling pale gray, almost silver in the dim corridor light. They seem to catch and hold the lamplight in an unusual way, glinting with something that makes her breath catch. "The girl," he rasps. "She didn't steal nothing." "And how would you know?" Cordelia releases Maven with a violent shove that sends her stumbling into the beggar. He catches her with surprising strength, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. His touch is cold, not icy, but cooler than human. A vampire, then? But he seems so old, so frail. "Because I watch," he says simply. "I see everything in this palace, and I saw who really took that candlestick." The corridor erupts in whispers. Cordelia's face flushes an ugly purple. "You're lying to protect a pretty face. Men are all the same, even pathetic ones like you. Brenna took it." The beggar's silver eyes fix on the older maid, who goes white as snow. 3 nights ago, after midnight service. She hid it in the new girl's quarters to frame her. She's been stealing from the palace for months. Small things, items that wouldn't be missed immediately. Silver spoons, jeweled buttons, golden thread from the sewing room. She's got them hidden in a loose stone behind her bed. 3rd floor, West Wing, room 14. The silence that follows is absolute. Brenna's face cycles through shock, terror, and finally rage. He's lying. He's a crazy old vagrant. Why would you believe him over me? I've served this palace for 15 years. Then you won't mind if we check your room, Cordelia says slowly. Her eyes are calculating now, sensing an opportunity. If Brenna is guilty, Cordelia can claim credit for uncovering the real thief. If the beggar is wrong, she can still punish Maven and have the beggar thrown out for false accusations. Either way, she wins. Do it, the beggar says. Check her room. Check the girl's room again, more carefully this time. You'll find the candlestick has a tiny scratch on its base. Brenna made it when she pried open the new girl's trunk with a knife. Cordelia dispatches 2 servants immediately. The wait feels eternal. Maven stands beside the beggar, her heart hammering so hard she's sure everyone can hear it. His hand is still on her elbow, a steady, grounding presence. She risks a glance up at him and finds those strange silver eyes already watching her. Something in his gaze makes her feel seen. Truly seen. Maybe for the first time in years. When the servants return, they're carrying a small cloth bag that clinks heavily. One of them also holds the silver candlestick. Found exactly what he said, the servant reports, addressing Cordelia, but stealing nervous glances at the beggar. The bag was behind a loose stone in Brenna's room, full of stolen goods. The candlestick was in the new girl's trunk, but it's got a fresh scratch on the base, like someone jimmied open the lock. Brenna breaks. She lunges for the exit, but 2 vampire guards materialize from the shadows. They're always watching, always listening, and they've heard everything. She's shrieking and cursing as they drag her away, her 15 years of service evaporating in an instant. The crimson cells await her now. Cordelia looks like she's bitten into rotten fruit. She has no choice but to clear Maven's name, but the words come out strangled. It appears there was a mistake. Maven, you're free to return to your duties. No apology. No acknowledgement of the humiliation, the terror, the near violence. Just dismissal. The crowd disperses, whispering excitedly about the drama. They'll be talking about this for weeks. But they scatter quickly, eager to avoid Cordelia's rage, now that she's been denied her prey. Soon it's just Maven and the beggar in the corridor. And Cordelia, who's watching them both with narrowed eyes. You, she says to the beggar. How did you really know? He shrugs, a movement that seems to pain his hunched back. Like I said, I watch. I see. His silver eyes meet Cordelia's dark ones without flinching. Maybe you should try seeing too instead of just looking for victims. Cordelia's face contorts with fury, but she can't act on it. Not when the king himself has granted this beggar sanctuary. She spins on her heel and stalks away, her footsteps sharp and angry against the stone floor, leaving Maven alone with her unlikely savior. Thank you, she whispers. Her voice is shaking. The terror is fading now, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion. You saved me. I don't know how to repay. Don't. He holds up a gnarled hand. No need for debts between us. But you barely know me. Why did you help? Those silver eyes study her with an intensity that makes her skin prickle. Maybe I know you better than you think, he says cryptically. Then he shuffles past her, leaning heavily on his stick. Get some rest, girl. You look half dead. She wants to say more, to understand what just happened, but he's already disappearing around the corner, and she is exhausted. Bone deep, soul tired, exhausted. She makes her way to her tiny room, barely more than a closet really, and collapses onto her narrow bed. She doesn't even undress. She just lies there, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the beggar's strange silver eyes over and over until sleep finally claims her. 3 days pass. Maven performs her duties in a fog of anxiety and exhaustion. Cordelia assigns her the worst tasks, scrubbing the kitchen floors on her hands and knees, emptying chamber pots, hauling heavy buckets of water up 4 flights of stairs. It's punishment disguised as normal service. Everyone knows it. No one interferes. But Maven doesn't complain. Complaining only makes things worse. She learned that lesson the hard way during her first year at the palace. She sees the beggar occasionally, always at a distance. He seems to haunt the servants' areas, shuffling through corridors, sitting in corners, watching with those unnerving silver eyes. Some of the staff leave him food scraps. Others ignore him entirely. A few mock him when they think he can't hear. Maven wants to thank him again, properly, but she never gets the chance. Their schedules never align, or Cordelia appears whenever Maven gets close to him, assigning her some urgent task that pulls her away. On the 4th day, Maven wakes before dawn with a gnawing pain in her stomach. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. Cordelia has been forgetting to give her meal vouchers, and Maven is too proud to beg from the other servants. Most of them wouldn't help her anyway. They've seen what happens to people who cross Cordelia. But today is different. Today, Maven is scheduled to work the morning shift in the scullery, and Cook Hendrik is one of the few people in the palace who's ever shown her kindness. He's human, ancient by mortal standards, and too valuable in his position for even Cordelia to intimidate. His breads and pastries are legendary across the Northern Territories. Even the king himself has praised Hendrik's honey cakes. Maven dresses in her patched uniform and makes her way through the pre-dawn darkness to the kitchens. The palace is different at this hour, quieter, almost peaceful. The vampire residents are at their weakest just before sunrise, retreating to their lightless chambers to rest. The human servants have the run of the place for a few precious hours. The kitchen is already warm and bright when Maven arrives, filled with the intoxicating scent of fresh bread. Hendrik is at his usual station, his gnarled hands working dough with practiced efficiency. He's got flour in his white hair and on his round cheeks, and the sight makes Maven smile despite her hunger and exhaustion. Maven. His weathered face creases with concern. "You look terrible, girl. When did you last eat?" "I'm fine," she lies, but her stomach chooses that moment to growl audibly. Hendrik frowns. Cordelia still withholding vouchers. Maven doesn't answer, but her silence is confirmation enough. "That woman is poison," Hendrik mutters, turning to his ovens. "Here." He pulls out a small loaf of bread, still steaming, and wraps it in cloth. "Take this. Hide it in your apron. Eat it when you're alone." Tears prick Maven's eyes. Such a simple kindness, but it feels monumental. "Thank you. I'll pay you back somehow." "Nonsense." Hendrik waves her off. "Just promise me you'll be careful. Cordelia's got it out for you. Everyone can see it." "Watch your back," Maven promises, and tucks the bread into her apron pocket, the warmth seeping through the fabric against her hip. She's about to start her work when a commotion erupts from the servants' entrance. "Out! Get out! This is a palace, not a charity house for filthy beggars." Maven recognizes that voice. It's Garrett, one of the men who tried to hold her down during her near stripping. He's one of Cordelia's favorites, probably because he's as cruel as she is. She peers around the corner to see the old beggar standing in the doorway, leaning on his twisted stick. Even from here, Maven can smell him. A ripe combination of unwashed body, stale urine, and something else. Sickness, maybe. He looks worse than before, his face even more gaunt, his rags hanging off a skeletal frame. "His Majesty said I could stay," the beggar rasps, but his voice is weaker now, barely audible. "His Majesty said you could shelter in the servants' quarters, not steal food from the kitchens." Garrett grabs the beggar's shoulder and shoves him back. The old man stumbles, nearly falling. "You've got no voucher, no permission. Get out before I throw you in the cells." The beggar catches himself on the doorframe. Those silver eyes scan the kitchen, passing over Garrett, over the other servants who've stopped to watch the entertainment until they land on Maven. She sees the recognition there, the memory of how he saved her. And she sees something else too. A plea, maybe, or a test. A silent question. "What will you do?" Maven's hand moves to the bread in her apron pocket. It's her only food. If she gives it away, she won't eat again until Cordelia decides to issue her vouchers. That could be days. She could grow weak, make mistakes in her work, give Cordelia more reasons to punish her. But the beggar saved her. And he looks so hungry. So desperately, painfully hungry. The decision is easier than it should be. Wait, Maven says, stepping forward. Every eye in the kitchen turns to her. Garrett's face darkens with displeasure. He can have my voucher. You don't have a voucher, Garrett sneers. Cordelia hasn't issued you one in days. Then he can have my portion. Maven reaches into her apron and pulls out the cloth-wrapped bread. It's still warm, still fresh. The smell makes her mouth water and her stomach cramp with need. Here. She crosses to the beggar and holds out the bread. Up close, he smells even worse, and she can see the dirt caked into every crease of his skin. But those silver eyes hold hers with an intensity that steals her breath. This is your food, he says quietly. Your only food. I know. She presses the bread into his gnarled hands. They're cold, like before. Vampire cold. Take it, please. Something flickers across his grimy face. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. Something that looks almost like pain. Why? He whispers, so quietly that only she can hear. Because you saved me when no one else would. She manages a small smile, despite the weakness in her legs, the lightheadedness creeping in at the edges of her vision, and because no one should go hungry if I can help it. He stares at her for a long moment, and Maven has the strangest sensation that she's being weighed, measured, judged in some fundamental way. Then his fingers close around the bread, careful not to touch her skin. Thank you, he says, his rough voice carrying a note that sounds almost reverent. I won't forget this. It's just bread, Maven says, but her cheeks flush with pleasure at his gratitude. Garrett makes a disgusted sound. You're as stupid as you are pretty, he tells Maven. Starving yourself for a filthy beggar. No wonder Cordelia hates you. The beggar's head snaps toward Garrett with startling speed, and for just a moment Maven sees something flash in those silver eyes. Something predatory and ancient and utterly terrifying. Garrett actually takes a step back, his face going pale. But then the beggar slumps again, shuffling and weak, and the moment passes. He nods once more to Maven, before limping out into the pre-dawn darkness, clutching his precious bread. The kitchen slowly returns to normal, though Maven catches Hendrik watching her with something like approval in his weathered eyes. She goes about her duties, washing dishes, scrubbing pots, hauling water, but her mind keeps returning to the beggar's silver eyes and the strange intensity of his gratitude. By midday, she's weak with hunger. By evening, she's trembling. She manages to finish her shift through sheer stubbornness, but when she finally returns to her room, she collapses onto her bed and immediately sinks into unconsciousness. She dreams of silver eyes and cold hands and a voice that says, I won't forget this, over and over until it becomes a rhythm like a heartbeat. When Maven wakes, it's to darkness and the sound of someone moving in her room. Terror floods her system. She jerks upright, her back hitting the wall, her heart hammering. Who's there? A candle flares to life, and in its flickering glow she sees the beggar standing beside her small table. He's set something down there. She can't quite make out what it is, and he's watching her with those unnerving silver eyes. I'm sorry, he says quietly. I didn't mean to frighten you. How did you get in? Maven's voice shakes. The door was locked. Was it? He sounds genuinely curious, as if locks are a foreign concept to him. You can't be here. If Cordelia finds out. Maven stops, her practical side warring with her gratitude and curiosity. Why are you here? You gave me your only food. He gestures to the table. I'm returning the favor. Maven lights her own candle with trembling hands and gasps at what she sees. The table is laden with food. Not the simple bread she gave away, but a feast. Fresh fruit glistening with dew. soft cheeses and cured meats, a small loaf of Hendrick's honey cake, a flask of what smells like spiced wine. "Where did you get all this?" she breathes. "This is food from the king's own table, reserved for the vampire nobility and their most honored guests. A servant caught with even a bite of such fare would be severely punished." "I have my ways," the beggar says vaguely. He settles into the room's single chair, a rickety thing Maven found discarded in a storage room, and watches her with those luminous eyes. "Eat." "I can't. This is too valuable. If someone finds out, no one will find out." He says it with such certainty that Maven almost believes him. "Eat, Maven. You're swaying where you sit. When did you last have a proper meal?" She can't remember. Weeks, maybe. Her mouth waters at the sight of the food, and her stomach cramps so painfully she has to wrap her arms around it. "Why are you doing this?" she whispers. "You're the one person in this entire palace who saw me as human," he says simply. "Even when I looked my worst, smelled my worst, offered you nothing in return. You gave me your only food without hesitation, without expectation of reward." He leans forward, and the candlelight catches his face in a strange way, making his features seem sharper, younger beneath the grime. "Do you know how rare that is? True kindness with no agenda?" "I'm nothing special," Maven protests, but she's already reaching for the cheese. Her hands shake as she brings it to her mouth. The first bite is heaven, creamy and rich, and so far removed from the thin gruel and stale bread that usually constitutes her meals. I couldn't let you go hungry." "Nothing special," the beggar repeats, but there's something in his voice that sounds almost amused. "Tell me about yourself, Maven. Where did you come from?" It's such a normal question, but no one in the palace has ever asked her. She's just a servant, invisible and interchangeable. But something about the beggar's presence, the way he listens, the intensity of his focus, makes her want to answer. So she does. Between bites of food that gradually restore her strength, she tells him about her childhood in a small village at the edge of the Northern Territories. Her mother, a seamstress who taught Maven to find beauty in small things, the way light hit a particular flower, the precise blue of the winter sky. Her father, who died when Maven was 7, a soldier in one of the king's border wars. "After father died, it was just Mama and me," Maven says, savoring a piece of honey cake that melts on her tongue. "We were poor, but we were happy. Mama always said happiness wasn't about having much. It was about noticing what you had." "Wise woman," the beggar murmurs. "She was." Maven's throat tightens. "When she got sick 2 winters ago, I tried everything. Every healer, every remedy. I sold everything we owned, our furniture, her sewing supplies, even my father's sword that she'd kept as a memorial. Nothing worked. I'm sorry." The simple words, spoken with genuine feeling, make Maven's eyes burn. "After she died, I couldn't pay the land taxes. The local lord evicted me. I wandered for a while, taking work where I could find it, taverns, farms, anywhere that would have me. But it was never enough. I was always cold, always hungry, always afraid. Until you came to Nighthaven Palace. Until I came here." Maven laughs bitterly. "I thought I'd found salvation. A position serving the great King Theron himself, ruler of the Northern Territories, the most powerful vampire in existence. Food, shelter, security. I thought I'd finally be safe. But you found Cordelia instead. I found Cordelia." Maven takes a long drink of the spiced wine. It warms her from the inside, loosening the tight knot of tension that's lived in her chest for months. "She took one look at me and decided I needed to be broken. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm young, or because some of the male servants showed interest. Maybe she just enjoys cruelty. Some people do." The beggar is quiet for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice carries a cold edge that makes Maven shiver. "Has she hurt you?" "Nothing I can't handle." But even as she says it, Maven's hand moves unconsciously to her ribs, where the worst bruises are. The beggar notices. Of course he notices. Those silver eyes miss nothing. "Show me," What? No, I'm fine. Maven. He leans forward and the candlelight does that strange thing again, making him look somehow less decrepit and more something else. Something her exhausted mind can't quite process. Show me. She should refuse. It's wildly inappropriate for a young woman to undress in front of a man, beggar or not. But something in his voice compels obedience, not through fear, but through the certainty that he genuinely wants to know, wants to see the evidence of her suffering. With trembling fingers, Maven unlaces the side of her uniform, the threadbare fabric worn thin from years of hard use, and lifts it to expose her left side. The beggar makes a sound that's almost a growl. The bruise is spectacular, a bloom of purple and black that spreads from her lower ribs up toward her breast, the mark of where Cordelia kicked her for being too slow with a tea service 3 days ago. There are others, Maven says quietly, letting her uniform fall back into place. But that's the worst one right now. Right now, the beggar repeats. His hands are clenched on the arms of the chair, the knuckles white. How long has this been happening? Since I arrived. 3 years. Maven shrugs, trying to appear nonchalant. It's not so bad. She hasn't broken anything important yet. Yet. The word hangs in the air like a threat. And the king? Does he know what happens in his own palace? The king? Maven laughs, but there's no humor in it. The king is a legend, a story. I've been here 3 years, and I've never even seen him. He's always in his private chambers, or away on kingdom business. As far as I can tell, the palace runs itself, and people like Cordelia do whatever they want. I see. The beggar sits back, and something about his posture changes. He seems less hunched, more regal somehow. But that's absurd. He's just a tired old man. Tell me, Maven, if you could ask anything of King Theron, what would it be? It's such an odd question that Maven actually considers it. What would she ask of the legendary vampire king? Money? Status? Revenge on Cordelia? I'd ask him to see, she says finally. Really see what happens in his palace. The cruelty, the injustice, the way people suffer while everyone looks the other way. I'd ask him to care about the people who serve him, not just as tools or resources, but as people. You wouldn't ask for revenge? For Cordelia to be punished? No. Maven is surprised by her own certainty. Revenge wouldn't fix anything. It would just make me like her. Someone who hurts others because they were hurt. I'd rather the whole system change. I'd rather no one else have to suffer what I've suffered. The beggar stares at her for so long that Maven starts to feel uncomfortable. Those silver eyes are so intense, so penetrating, as if they're looking past her skin and bones into something deeper. You're extraordinary, he says finally, his rough voice carrying a note that sounds almost like wonder. Do you know that? I'm really not. Maven fidgets with the hem of her uniform. I'm just trying to survive. No, you're trying to survive with your soul intact. That's much harder. He stands, and the movement is less labored than before, as if the food and conversation have restored some of his strength. I should go. You need rest. Wait. Maven rises too, swaying slightly. The wine has gone to her head. I don't even know your name. He pauses at the door, his back to her. For a moment, she thinks he won't answer. Then, Theron. My name is Theron. That's the same name as the king, Maven says, surprised. Yes. He glances back over his shoulder, and even through the grime and matted hair, his smile is devastating. Imagine that. Then he's gone, slipping out into the darkened corridor like a shadow, leaving Maven alone with the remains of the feast and a strange, fluttering sensation in her chest. She tells herself it's just the wine, just the food after so long hungry, just the kindness of an unexpected friendship. She tells herself it's nothing more than that. But when she finally sleeps, she dreams of silver eyes that see everything, and a voice that calls her extraordinary, and the inexplicable feeling that something fundamental has shifted in her world. The next week is the strangest of Maven's life. The beggar, Theron, she reminds herself, continues to haunt the palace corridors, but now Maven sees him differently. She notices things she missed before, the way the vampire guards watch him with wary respect, never quite challenging his presence. The way Cook Hendrik treats him with deference, slipping him choice cuts of meat and fresh bread without being asked. The way even Cordelia, for all her cruelty, never directly confronts him. And she notices the way he watches her. Always from a distance, those silver eyes tracking her movements through the palace. When Cordelia assigns her particularly degrading tasks, he's there, a silent witness. When Garrett tries to corner her in a storage room, his intentions clear in his leering grin, the beggar appears, and Garrett retreats without a word, his face pale. It should feel intrusive, being watched so constantly. Instead, Maven feels protected. For the first time in 3 years, she doesn't walk through the palace in constant fear, and every night, when she returns to her room after her shift, she finds food waiting. Not the feast from that first night, but enough. Fresh bread, fruit, cheese, occasionally a piece of roasted chicken or a small cup of wine. It appears without explanation, as if by magic, always when she's away. She tries to thank Theron, but he's always gone before she can catch him, melting into the shadows like smoke. On the 8th day, everything changes. Maven is scrubbing floors in the grand ballroom, a massive space with soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers that refract light into rainbows. The ballroom is rarely used, but it must be kept immaculate in case the king decides to host a gathering. It's one of Cordelia's favorite punishment assignments because it takes hours to clean properly. Maven is on her hands and knees, her brush moving in steady circles, when she hears voices approaching. Male voices, deep and commanding. "Reports are troubling, Your Majesty," one voice says. "The southern borders remain unstable. Lord Cassius believes the rebellion may spread north, if not contained." "Cassius worries too much," a second voice responds, and something about its timbre makes Maven's skin prickle. "The southern lords are posturing, nothing more. They'll fall in line. And if they don't, then I'll remind them why they swore fealty in the first place." The threat in those words is absolute. Maven freezes, suddenly aware that she's about to encounter someone very important. She starts to scramble to her feet, to make herself invisible the way servants are supposed to, but her foot catches on the bucket of dirty water. It tips, spilling across the pristine marble floor in a spreading puddle. "No, no, no," Maven whispers, already reaching for her rags. Cordelia will kill her for this. The floor will need to be cleaned all over again, and she'll be blamed for... Well, what do we have here? Maven looks up and her heart stops. Standing in the ballroom doorway are 3 men. 2 are clearly nobles, dressed in fine clothes, their postures radiating wealth and power. One has dark hair and sharp features. The other is blonde with pale, almost translucent skin. Both are beautiful in the unsettling way of vampires, too perfect to be quite real. But it's the third man who steals Maven's breath. He's tall, easily over 6 feet, with a powerful build that his fine black clothing does nothing to hide. His hair is dark as midnight, pulled back from a face that looks carved from marble. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth that's both sensual and cruel. His skin is pale, but not bloodless, luminous in a way that speaks of tremendous power held in check. And his eyes, silver, like moonlight on water, like winter starlight. Like the beggar, Maven breathes, and horror crashes over her in a wave. Because this is not some vampire noble. This is King Theron himself. She's seen paintings, heard descriptions from servants who've glimpsed him over the years. This is the immortal ruler of the Northern Territories, the most powerful vampire in existence, the legend who walks as a man. And she's seen those eyes before, closer, gentler, in the face of a filthy beggar who shuffled through corridors and accepted her bread with gratitude. "You," she whispers, understanding flooding through her. "It was you." King Theron, because she can't think of him as just Theron anymore, not when he stands before her in his full power and majesty, tilts his head slightly, and his perfect lips curve into the faintest smile. "Hello, Maven," he says, his voice the same as the beggar's, but clearer now, resonant with authority. "I believe we've met." The two nobles look confused. One, the dark-haired one, says, "Your Majesty, do you know this servant?" "I do." Theron's silver eyes never leave Maven's face. She's the one who shared her only meal with a starving beggar, who showed kindness when she had nothing to spare, who proved that nobility has nothing to do with blood or status, and everything to do with the choices we make. "I don't understand," Maven manages. Her mind is reeling. The beggar was the king. The king was the beggar. All those nights of conversation, of shared food, of growing connection. All a test? A deception? Why? "Because I needed to see the truth of my palace," Theron says simply. He steps forward, his boots clicking on the marble floor, and Maven realizes she's still kneeling in the puddle of spilled water. "I've ruled for 3 centuries, Maven. I've conquered kingdoms, crushed rebellions, built an empire that spans from the frozen mountains to the Crimson Sea. But empires are built on people, and I realized I'd forgotten that. Forgotten what life was like for those who serve me. So I decided to see for myself. By pretending to be a beggar." Maven's voice comes out flat, emotionless, because if she lets herself feel anything right now, she'll shatter. Was any of it real? All of it was real. Theron stops a few feet away, and Maven notices the way the other nobles have retreated, giving their king space. "The hunger was real. The gratitude when you gave me food. The rage when I saw your bruises. He pauses, and something flickers in those silver eyes. "The way I felt when you said you were nothing special." "I am nothing special," Maven says. Anger is starting to burn through her shock. "I'm a servant, a nobody. Was this entertaining for you, watching the stupid human girl play kindness with what she thought was a beggar? Maven. Did you laugh about it? When you went back to your fine chambers and your luxury?" She's on her feet now, water dripping from her skirt, her hands clenched into fists. "Did you tell your nobles how the poor little servant shared her bread? How adorably pathetic I was?" "I told no one." Theron's voice has gone cold, but Maven is too angry to care about propriety or survival. "What passed between us was private." "Because it was a game to you!" Tears are burning in Maven's eyes, and she hates herself for them. "You were playing dress-up while I was giving you food I needed to survive. Do you have any idea what it's like to be that hungry? To be that desperate? I know exactly what it's like." Theron's eyes flash with something dangerous. "I was human once, a very long time ago. I remember hunger. I remember desperation. And I remember how rare it is to find genuine kindness in the midst of suffering. That's not a game to me, Maven. That's sacred." His words hit like a blow, stealing her anger. She sways, suddenly aware of exactly who she's yelling at. The king. She's shouting at the king. Vampires have been executed for less. "I'm sorry," she whispers, dropping her gaze. "I forgot myself. I'll accept whatever punishment. Look at me." She doesn't want to, can't bear to see disgust or anger or worse, pity in those silver eyes. But the command in his voice is absolute. She looks up. Theron is watching her with an expression she can't quite read. Intensity, yes, but also something softer. Something almost like longing. "I didn't come here to punish you," he says quietly. "I came to thank you, and to tell you that things are going to change in this palace." As if summoned by his words, Cordelia appears in the ballroom doorway. She sees the spilled water, sees Maven, and her face contorts with fury. "You clumsy, worthless—" She starts across the floor, her hand raised to strike, but she stops dead when she registers the king's presence. All the color drains from her face. "Your Majesty, I didn't realize you were here. I was just about to discipline this servant for her incompetence." "Were you?" Theron's voice could freeze fire. "Tell me, Cordelia, how long have you been head housekeeper at Nighthaven Palace?" 23 years, Your Majesty. Cordelia's voice is cautious. I've served with loyalty and dedication since you granted me the dark gift. And in those 23 years, how many servants have you beaten? Silence. Absolute terrible silence. Your Majesty, I don't understand the question. It's quite simple. Theron moves toward Cordelia with predatory grace. The two nobles remain by the door, watching with evident fascination. I spent a week in this palace disguised as a beggar. I watched, I listened, and I saw how you treat those beneath you. The casual cruelty, the beatings, the systematic abuse. So I ask again, how many? Cordelia's mouth opens and closes. She looks like a fish drowning in air. Discipline is necessary to maintain order. How many, Cordelia? I don't keep count, the words burst out of her. They're just servants, humans. They need to be controlled or they become uppity and... Garrett, Theron says, not looking away from Cordelia. Summon the palace guards. Cordelia is hereby stripped of her position and her privileges. She's to be held in the cells pending formal charges. Your Majesty, no! Cordelia drops to her knees, suddenly desperate. Please, I've served you loyally for decades. I've done everything you asked. This is about the girl, isn't it? She's bewitched you somehow. Made you think. She showed me the truth. Theron's voice cuts through Cordelia's pleading like a blade. Something you should have learned in 23 years of service. Power without mercy is just tyranny wearing a crown. You're fortunate I'm in a merciful mood. You'll face formal justice, rather than my immediate judgment. Guards appear and haul Cordelia away. She's shrieking about injustice and conspiracies and bewitchment, but her voice fades as she's dragged into the depths of the palace. Leaving Maven alone with the king and his two nobles, Lord Cassius, Lord Demetrius, Theron says, still not looking away from Maven. Leave us. The two nobles exchange glances but obey, bowing and retreating. Their footsteps echo through the vast ballroom until they fade entirely. And then it's just Maven and Theron, standing in a puddle of dirty water in the middle of crystal elegance. She's right, you know, Maven says quietly. I'm nobody. You can't reform your entire palace system, because one servant was kind to you. The other nobles will question your judgment. Let them question. Theron moves closer, and Maven's heart hammers against her ribs. I've spent 3 centuries making decisions based on strategy, on power, on what benefits the kingdom. For once, I'm making a decision based on what's right. What happens to me now? Maven doesn't know what she wants the answer to be. That depends. Theron is close enough now that she can feel the cold radiating from him, the otherworldly chill of his vampire nature. I told you things during my time as a beggar. Private things, thoughts I've shared with no one in decades. I showed you weakness and uncertainty, and you didn't exploit it. You just listened. That's a rare gift, Maven. It's called being a decent person, Maven says, but her voice shakes. In my world, decency is revolutionary. His hand comes up, and she thinks he might touch her face, but he stops just short. I'm offering you a choice. You can continue as a servant if you wish, but in a position of honor, with protections and comforts you deserve. Or? Maven barely breathes the word. Or you can accept a position in my personal household, as a companion, an advisor, someone who will tell me the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. His silver eyes search hers. I need people around me who see me as more than just the king. You've already proven you can do that. It's too much. The offer, the intensity of his gaze, the implications of what he's suggesting. Maven takes a step back and immediately realizes her mistake. Her foot catches on her sodden skirt, and she starts to fall backward into the puddle. Theron moves faster than thought, catching her around the waist and pulling her against him. For a moment they're pressed together, her soft warmth against his cold strength, and Maven feels something electric pass between them. Not just attraction, though that's there, She'd have to be dead not to notice how devastatingly beautiful he is. But something deeper. Recognition. As if her soul knows his and has been waiting for this moment. "I've got you," he murmurs, and his voice is rough again, like when he was the beggar. "I'll always catch you, Maven, if you let me." She should be afraid. He's a vampire, a predator, a being who could drain her dry without effort. But all she feels is safe, seen, valued in a way she's never experienced before. "Yes," she whispers. "Yes, I'll accept your offer." His smile is brilliant and terrible and beautiful all at once. "Then come with me. There's something I want to show you." He sweeps her into his arms before she can protest, cradling her against his chest as if she weighs nothing. She makes a startled sound, but his hold is secure, unbreakable, and after a moment she relaxes into it. Theron carries her through the palace, moving with inhuman speed through corridors that blur past. Servants and nobles alike press themselves against walls, staring in shock at the sight of their king carrying a bedraggled human maid in his arms. Maven can imagine the gossip that will spawn, but somehow she can't bring herself to care. They end up in chambers she's only heard whispers about. The king's private suite, located in the highest tower of Nighthaven Palace. The rooms are stunning, all dark woods and rich fabrics, and that particular luxury that comes from centuries of accumulated wealth and power. Theron sets her down gently in front of an enormous window that overlooks the entire kingdom. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, and the view is breathtaking. "This is what I see every night," Theron says, standing beside her. "The kingdom I built, the people I rule. For decades it's been enough. The power, the control, the knowledge that I've created something that will outlast me. But during my time as a beggar, I realized something." "What?" Maven asks, unable to look away from the sunset. "That I've been alone for a very long time." His voice is quiet, almost vulnerable. "Surrounded by people, yes, but truly alone. No one sees me, Maven. They see the king, the legend, the power, but not me." "I see you," Maven says without thinking. "I saw you even when you were covered in grime and pretending to be helpless. You have kind eyes, sad eyes sometimes, like you're carrying a weight no one else can understand, but kind." When she dares to glance at him, his expression is raw, unguarded in a way she suspects is dangerous for him, a weakness he can't afford to show. "Stay with me," he says. It's not quite a command, not quite a plea, something in between. Not as a servant, not as an obligation, but because you want to, because you see me and you're not afraid. "I am afraid," Maven admits. "Terrified, actually. You're the king. I'm nobody. This is a fairy tale, and fairy tales don't happen to girls like me. Maybe it's time to write a new kind of fairy tale." Theron turns to face her fully, and his hand comes up to cup her cheek. His touch is cool, but gentle, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating tenderness. One where the king doesn't have to be alone, and the maid doesn't have to be invisible. One where kindness matters more than bloodlines, and two broken people find something whole together. "You're not broken," Maven whispers, but she leans into his touch despite herself. "I'm ancient and cold, and I've done terrible things in the name of necessity." His silver eyes hold hers with fierce intensity. "But when you gave me that bread, when you shared your only food without hesitation, I felt something I haven't felt in centuries. Hope. The possibility that I could be more than just the monster who wears a crown. You're not a monster. You don't know what I've done." "No," Maven agrees, "but I know what you did. You spent a week in filth and hunger just to understand your people better. You watched me get abused and you remembered. You're trying to change things, to make them better. That's not what monsters do." Theron makes a sound that's half laugh, half sob. "You undo me," he says roughly. "One mortal girl with a kind heart, and you undo 3 centuries of careful control." "I'm sorry," Maven offers, but she's smiling slightly. Don't be. He leans closer and Maven's breath catches. May I kiss you, Maven? Not as a king commanding a subject, but as a man asking a woman he admires more than anyone he's met in 300 years. Her heart is hammering so hard, she's sure he can hear it. Vampires have extraordinary senses. He probably knows exactly how affected she is, how much she wants this despite every logical reason she shouldn't. Yes, she breathes. His kiss is gentle at first, almost reverent, as if he's afraid she'll break. His lips are cool against hers, but not unpleasantly so, and when she responds, opening to him, he makes a sound deep in his chest that sends heat flooding through her. The kiss deepens. His arms come around her, pulling her close, and Maven loses herself in the sensation. He tastes like winter nights and dark wine and something indefinable that's purely him. His hands are steady on her back, holding her as if she's precious, and for the first time in years, maybe in her entire life, Maven feels cherished. When they finally break apart, both breathing hard, well, she's breathing hard, she's not sure he needs to breathe, Theron rests his forehead against hers. Stay, he says again, not in the servants' quarters. Here, with me. Let me show you what it means to be truly valued. People will talk, Maven says weakly. Let them. Theron's smile is wicked. I'm the king. I'll do as I please. What if I want more than just being your companion? The words slip out before Maven can stop them, bold and dangerous. What if I want what? His silver eyes search hers. Tell me what you want, Maven. Anything. Everything. It's yours. I want to be seen, she whispers. Not as your servant or your subject, or even your companion, but as your equal. As someone who stands beside you, not behind you. The silence stretches, and Maven's heart sinks. She's asked for too much, pushed too far. A human girl demanding equality with a vampire king. It's absurd, impossible, the height of arrogance. But then Theron smiles, and it's like the sun breaking through storm clouds. My equal, he says, testing the words. Yes, I like that very much. He takes her hand, threading his fingers through hers. It won't be easy. The nobles will resist. The old families will see it as weakness. There will be challenges, possibly even danger. I've been in danger every day for 3 years, Maven points out. At least now, I'll have someone watching my back. Always, Theron promises, and the weight of that vow hangs in the air between them. I'll stand between you and anyone who tries to harm you. I'll give you everything I have, everything I am. My protection, my resources, my loyalty. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll offer you the dark gift itself. Eternity at my side, if you want it. Maven's breath catches. The dark gift, transformation into a vampire. Immortality. Power. The chance to stand truly equal with him, but also the loss of her humanity. Her warmth. Her mortal life. I'm not ready for that, she says honestly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I need time to understand what it would mean. Then take all the time you need. Theron brings her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. I've waited 3 centuries for someone like you. I can wait a few more years. A knock at the door interrupts them. Theron's expression shifts, becoming more guarded, more regal. Ixnquirk. Enter. Lord Cassius steps in, his dark eyes taking in the scene, the king and the maid standing close, holding hands, clearly intimate. His eyebrows rise, but he doesn't comment. Your Majesty, the formal court session begins in an hour. The nobles are already gathering. Then let them wait. Theron doesn't release Maven's hand. Cassius, I want you to make an announcement. From this moment forward, Maven is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me directly. She's to be given chambers in the royal wing, a wardrobe befitting her new station, and full access to the palace resources. She's to be treated with the respect due to my chosen companion. Cassius's eyes widen fractionally, the vampire equivalent of open shock. Your Majesty, the nobles will have questions. This is highly irregular. I am the king, Theron says coolly. Irregular is my prerogative. Make the announcement. As you command. Cassius bows and retreats, but not before shooting Maven a look that's equal parts curiosity and wariness. When they're alone again, Maven says, You just turned my entire life upside down. Yes. Theron doesn't sound remotely apologetic. Does it bother you? I don't know yet. She looks around the opulent chamber, so different from her tiny closet of a room. A week ago I was scrubbing floors and going hungry. Now I'm the king's companion, living in the royal wing. It's too much to process. Then don't process it all at once. Theron tugs her toward a door that leads to what looks like a bedroom, an enormous space dominated by a bed that could easily fit 6 people. Rest. You're exhausted, and you need to regain your strength. Tonight, you'll be formally introduced to the court. But for now, just be. Will you stay? The question slips out before Maven can second-guess it. I know you have duties, but I don't want to be alone yet. Everything is too strange. Something softens in Theron's expression. I'll stay, he promises, for as long as you need. He settles into a chair beside the bed while Maven, still in her damp servant's uniform, climbs onto the mattress. It's the softest thing she's ever touched, like sleeping on a cloud. She should probably change into something cleaner, but exhaustion is pulling at her, and Theron's presence is oddly comforting. Tell me about your life, she says drowsily. Before you were king, when you were still human. That was a very long time ago, Theron says, but he starts talking. His voice is low and soothing, weaving a story of a different time. He was a soldier once, fighting in wars that are now ancient history. He was turned on a battlefield by a vampire lord who saw potential in his skill and ferocity. He rose through the ranks of vampire society through cunning and strength, eventually challenging and defeating the old king to claim the throne. I've ruled for 300 years, he says quietly. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched humans discover new technologies, new philosophies, new ways of understanding the world, and I've been alone through all of it, because immortality is a lonely curse when you have no one to share it with. You have people now, Maven murmurs. Lord Cassius, Lord Demetrius, all your court. I have subjects, Theron corrects gently. People who serve me out of fear or ambition or duty. That's not the same as having someone who sees you for who you are and chooses to stay anyway. I choose to stay, Maven says, and even through her exhaustion, she means it. Not because you're the king, because you're Theron, because you listened to me ramble about my mother and you brought me food, and you made me feel like I mattered. You do matter. His hand finds hers across the space between chair and bed. More than you know. Maven falls asleep like that, holding hands with a vampire king who used to be a beggar, who saw her when she was invisible, who looked at her and saw someone worth saving. The formal court session is overwhelming in ways Maven couldn't have imagined. She's been dressed in a gown of deep sapphire silk that brings out the gold flecks in her hazel eyes. Her hair has been washed and arranged by attendants who seemed shocked to be serving a former scullery maid. Her face has been carefully painted with cosmetics that enhance her natural beauty without hiding it. When she looks in the mirror, she barely recognizes herself. She looks noble, elegant, like someone who belongs in a palace. But inside, she's still Maven, the girl who scrubbed floors and went hungry and survived through sheer stubbornness. That core of herself hasn't changed, no matter how fancy the packaging. Theron comes to collect her himself, and the look in his eyes when he sees her makes her blush. You're stunning, he says simply. Though you were just as beautiful in your servant's uniform, the dress just makes it more obvious. Flatterer, Maven accuses, but she's pleased. Merely honest. He offers his arm and she takes it, letting him lead her through the palace toward the great throne room. The corridors are lined with nobles and servants, all of whom stare openly at Maven. She can feel their curiosity, their shock, their resentment. A human girl on the king's arm, dressed in finery, walking as if she has every right to be there. "Ignore them," Theron murmurs. "Eyes forward. You're my equal, remember?" "Your equal," Maven repeats, drawing strength from the words. The throne room is massive, easily 3 times the size of the ballroom. It's packed with vampire nobles, centuries-old beings dressed in the height of fashion, their perfect faces arranged in expressions of polite curiosity that don't quite hide their shock. The room falls silent as Theron enters, Maven still on his arm. He leads her to the dais where his throne sits, a magnificent construction of dark wood and precious metals that somehow manages to be both elegant and vaguely threatening. But instead of taking his seat, Theron turns to face the assembled court, keeping Maven beside him. "My lords and ladies," he says, his voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. "I present to you Maven Ashford, who has accepted my invitation to join my personal household as my companion and advisor." The silence is absolute. Then whispers start, spreading through the room like wildfire. "A human? Is he serious? This is unprecedented. She's clearly bewitched him somehow. Silence." Theron doesn't raise his voice, but the command in it is absolute. The whispers cut off instantly. "Some of you may question my choice. That's your prerogative. But understand this. Maven is under my personal protection. Any insult to her is an insult to me. Any harm that comes to her will be answered with my full wrath. I suggest you govern yourselves accordingly." The threat hangs in the air, and Maven sees several nobles actually pale. They remember what the king is capable of when angered. Theron didn't build his empire through kindness. But then his expression softens slightly as he looks down at Maven. "I also want you to understand why I've made this choice. A week ago, I walked among you as a beggar. I wanted to see the truth of my palace, stripped of the deference and performance that comes with my crown. And what I found was disappointing." More whispers, quickly stifled. "I found cruelty masquerading as discipline. I found servants abused and broken by those entrusted with their care. I found a system that valued power over kindness, control over compassion. And I found one single person in this entire palace, who showed genuine care for someone she thought was beneath her, who shared her only food with a starving beggar, who asked for nothing in return, who proved that nobility of character has nothing to do with bloodlines or immortality." Theron's hand tightens on Maven's. "Maven Ashford saw me at my lowest and treated me with dignity. She spoke truth even when it cost her. She showed me that my palace had become a place of fear rather than honor. And she did it all without knowing who I was. That kind of integrity is rare. It's precious. And I'll be damned if I let it go unrecognized." He raises their joined hands, presenting Maven to the court like a treasure. "So yes, she's human. Yes, she was a servant. And yes, I've chosen her to stand beside me. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to challenge me directly. No one speaks. No one would dare. The king has spoken, and his word is law." But then someone begins to clap. It's Lord Cassius, standing near the front of the crowd. The gesture is unexpected, and for a moment no one else moves. Then Lord Demetrius joins in. Then others. Slowly, reluctantly at first, but gaining momentum, the entire court breaks into applause. It's not universally enthusiastic. Maven can see the tight faces, the forced smiles, the nobles who are clapping only because refusal would be noted. But it's acknowledgement, acceptance, however grudging. "Thank you," Maven whispers to Theron. "Don't thank me," he murmurs back. "I'm being entirely selfish. I want you here because you make me better. That's all the justification I need." The rest of the court session passes in a blur. Nobles approach to offer formal greetings, their eyes assessing Maven with varying degrees of curiosity, suspicion, and calculation. She handles it as best she can, remembering her mother's lessons about courtesy and grace. Kindness costs nothing, her mother used to say. Even when people don't deserve it, it reflects on you, not them. By the time the session ends, Maven is exhausted, but exhilarated. She's survived her first official appearance as the king's companion. She hasn't fallen, hasn't said anything disastrous, hasn't embarrassed Theron or herself. "You were perfect," Theron tells her as they retreat to his private chambers. "Every inch the lady, but you never lost yourself. You were still genuinely you." "I have no idea how to be anything else," Maven admits. "Good. Don't learn." He draws her into his arms, and she goes willingly, resting her head against his chest. "I need you to stay exactly who you are, Maven. My conscience. My connection to the world beyond power and politics. Promise me you won't change." "Only if you promise the same," she counters. "Stay the man who brought me food every night, who listened to my stories, who saw me as a person, not just a pretty face or a curiosity." "Deal," Theron says, and seals it with a kiss that makes Maven's toes curl. Later, as they sit together watching the moon rise over the kingdom, Maven asks the question that's been nagging at her all day. What happens to Cordelia? And the others like her? "Formal trials," Theron says. "I won't be a tyrant about this, but I will be just. Anyone found guilty of systematic abuse will face consequences. Some will lose their positions. Some will face imprisonment. A few might face execution if their crimes warrant it." "Will you give them a chance to change?" Maven asks. "Like you're changing things in the palace?" Theron is quiet for a long moment. "You're too forgiving," he says finally. "Cordelia tormented you for 3 years. She beat you, starved you, tried to humiliate you publicly. Most people would want revenge." "Most people aren't trying to build something better," Maven says. "If we just replace cruelty with more cruelty, nothing really changes. We're just shifting who's at the top and who's at the bottom. You're going to reform my entire kingdom, aren't you?" Theron sounds amused and awed in equal measure. Someone has to. Maven leans into him, feeling his cool strength at her back. "You were alone for 3 centuries. You got used to ruling through fear because it was efficient. But you're not alone anymore. You have me now, and I'm going to be very annoying about things like mercy and second chances. Promise?" Theron's arms tighten around her. "Promise," Maven says, and she can hear the smile in her own voice. They sit like that for hours, the vampire king and the former maid, watching the stars wheel overhead. It's the beginning of something new, not just for them, but for the entire Northern Territories. Changes are coming, reforms that will reshape how the kingdom functions from its highest nobles to its lowest servants. It won't be easy. There will be resistance, pushback, possibly even attempts to undermine Theron's authority. But Maven isn't afraid. She survived 3 years of Cordelia's cruelty. She survived poverty and loss and desperate hunger. She can survive anything as long as she stays true to herself, and as long as she has Theron beside her, not above her, not controlling her, but truly beside her as an equal and partner. "I love you," she says suddenly, surprised by the words but knowing they're true. "I didn't mean to. It's too fast, too impossible, but I do." Theron goes very still. When he speaks, his voice is rough with emotion. "I love you too. From the moment you handed me that bread, knowing it was your only food. From the moment you looked at a filthy beggar and saw someone worth saving. I've loved you for what feels like forever, even though it's only been a week. A week that changed everything," Maven says. "A week that saved me," Theron corrects. "You saved me, Maven. From becoming the monster I was afraid I'd already turned into. You showed me there was still hope, still goodness in the world, still a reason to care about more than just power and survival." They kiss under the stars, and Maven thinks about fairy tales. The stories her mother used to tell, of princes and paupers, of tests and trials, of love conquering all. Those stories never mentioned how complicated real love would be, how much work it would take, how many challenges they'd face. But they also never mentioned how satisfying it would feel to be truly seen, truly valued, truly loved for exactly who you are. King Theron and Maven Ashford. The vampire lord and the former maid. The legend and the woman who proved that kindness matters more than status. It's not a traditional fairy tale. But then again, Maven was never a traditional heroine. She's something better. She's real, flawed, strong, and unwilling to compromise her values for comfort or safety. And as she stands in the arms of the man who was both beggar and king, who tested his palace and found her worthy, who offered her not just protection, but partnership, Maven knows she's exactly where she's meant to be. The story is just beginning, but she's ready for whatever comes next. Together, they'll write a new kind of tale, one where love isn't about rescue or salvation, but about two people choosing each other, again and again, no matter what obstacles stand in their way. And that, Maven thinks, is the best kind of fairy tale there is.